My name is Mike Reese, and I'm the founder of MatchPoint Intelligence, a fully automated compatibility matching platform that instantly matches any heavy machinery vehicle, like a skid steer or a tractor, in any attachment that that vehicle can utilize. We work with e-commerce companies and rental companies to make you more on attachment sales and rentals. In this video, I'm going to talk about something that I call the 5 gates. Now, this is a framework I developed when I was running an e-commerce company, and I believe it's the 5 questions that any individual makes when they're making any purchase. So not just e-commerce purchases, but they run through this list of criteria in their head subconsciously, very, very quickly, and it happens all the time when they're looking at different facets of products. So it happens in quick succession. Think of it best as like if someone throws you a baseball and you know how to catch it, even though you're not like manually doing all of this calculus in your head, right? It's just constantly going on in the background. So I'm going to give it to you in the general sense about like any purchase, and then I'm going to cater the question specifically to heavy machinery because that's my background and that's like how it came through, and that's what MatchPoint does, right? So here they are, the 5 gates. When someone's making a purchasing decision, they have to ask these 5 questions. The first one is, will it do what I need it to do? The second question is, will it work with what I have? The third question is, can I afford it? The fourth one is, will it arrive when I need it to? And then the fifth one is inclusive of all of the other 4, and it's what happens if it doesn't, right? So let's go through this with an example. Say you lost your remote control for your TV, right? And you need to go buy a new one. The first question, will it do what I need it to do? Say in this example, you're buying e-commerce, so you go to Google and you type in remote control for TV. You hit enter and you see that banner of photos, like product photos for shopping, and you're looking through each of them. Now, if you're looking through them and they look like remotes, you're good. But if you see one that looks like a stapler, then you're going to be like, hey, I'm not even going to click that page because it's not what I'm looking for. Unless it's like a really good stapler or something like that that somehow controls TVs. But you're going to immediately filter that out. It doesn't matter if it's 1 cent. It doesn't matter if it can get to you right away. It's still going to be completely useless for what you're trying to do because it's not going to do the job that you need it to do. So the second question is, will it work with what I have? Say you're doing that again, you type in remote control, you hit enter, you're looking at the remotes, and you find one that looks relatively similar to the remote that you currently have. This is also part of the filtering process. If it looks completely different, you're probably not going to click on it, but if it looks similar, you're going to click on it. Now, in that product page, you're probably immediately going to start looking for some kind of table or some kind of like blurb that says works with X type of TVs or works with this model of this TV. And that's the second thing that you're going to need to validate before you can even think about buying it. Because if you can't get through that part, then you might buy something that just doesn't even work, and it's going to just waste your time. You have to wait for shipping and everything like that. So immediately after making sure that it is a remote, you also have to make sure that it's going to be a remote that works with your TV. The third question is, can I afford it? This is pretty self-explanatory, but just, for clarity's sake, if you say you find a remote that is a remote, then you find a remote that is a remote and it works with your TV, but it's $1 billion. You're not going to get it. There's just no human way you're going to be like, I'm going to spend $1 billion on a remote, right? On the other extreme, if you find a remote that is a remote, works with your TV, and is like $4, you're gonna be like, hey, all right, I think I can afford this. Like that is now checked off. I can start looking at other components of like this particular product page now. Fourth question is, will it arrive when I need it to? This is also relatively self-explanatory, but say you have there's a big game coming up on Sunday, you want to watch with the boys, and you need a remote by then, right? So if you find everything that meets all this other criteria, you find a remote, it's available, it's affordable, it's going to work with your TV, it is a remote, but it's not going to get here for 2 months, then you're not going to buy it because it's not going to ultimately accomplish what you need it to accomplish. So it won't arrive when you need it to, which is going to like cancel out all of the other good components of this particular product. Then the fifth one is, what happens if it doesn't? Now, in a general sense, this is like returns and things like that. For maybe something small like a remote, that might be something that you just implicitly say, hey, if it doesn't, I'm just going to eat the cost. Maybe it's like $10. I'll just eat the cost and buy another one, right? But one of the reasons that Amazon is such a big company is because they do this particular one very, very well. They have an extremely good return policy. So they have huge amounts of brand trust. Implicitly with Amazon, even if there might be some like low quality stuff, that if you get something that isn't what you're looking for, you can return it with like 0 friction and you'll get your money back. And it's very, very easy to do. So This is why it's the last question, by the way, because it usually only happens after everything else checks out. Because you don't really need to know about returns if you're not even looking at a remote. And you don't need to worry about returns if you're looking at a remote that doesn't work through TV, or if it's $1 billion and you're not going to buy it, right? So let's then take this to the heavy machinery industry, right? Actually, before we do, I'm going to touch on one last component of this. They're called the five gates, and there's a reason for that. Think of them like literal gates that you have to go through to get to the promised land of whatever purchase you have. If any one of those gates is closed, you're not going to be able to make that purchase, and you're going to have to leave and get additional information. This happens over the entire purchasing journey, not just in a particular like session of browsing, but a really good company answers all these questions in that moment so that you don't have to expand your purchasing journey to like other sources of information. So if you go to a website and it has four of the five, and you're like, man, I'm still just not sure if it's going to work with my TV, you're probably still going to leave and keep looking around. So it doesn't matter how great the price is, and it doesn't matter how available it is, and it doesn't matter how much it's definitely remote, and it doesn't matter how great your return policy is, mostly. You're usually at this point going to be like, all right, we got all the customers that didn't care about this particular thing, but we're losing out on all the customers that did. So they're five gates because they're binary. It's either 0 or 1. It's closed or it's open. And to maximize the throughput of any e-commerce store or any rental company, or really any business that has things that they sell for purchases, so like any consumer goods business, you have to have all five gates open, and you have to have the information available for each one of those things readily available at the time of browsing or purchase. So now let's switch gears to the heavy equipment industry, and we'll cater the question specifically to how people purchase this equipment. So the heavy equipment industry, for those of you who don't know, I mean, it's extremely expensive equipment, and it's an obstacle. Like, people don't buy equipment for status. They do it because they have something to do. They have a job that they need to do. They're trying to accomplish something, and this is a tool that they can use to do that. So it's really like friction in their ultimate goal of like getting something done. It's also extremely expensive. It's very heavy, and it's very cumbersome to like put together and like attach and all those things like that. So all of these five gates are like ramped way up in intensity because the repercussions of a mistake are so high when you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on equipment that gets shipped by a truck, and it's very bulky and expensive to ship back and things like that, right? So, catering the five gates to this industry, the questions are: one, will it do the job that I need it to do? Two, will it fit my vehicle? Three, can I afford it? This one's the same. Four, will it arrive when I need it to? Also the same. And then fifth, inclusive of all the four, what happens if it doesn't? So the really main two that change are: will it do the job that I need it to do? Because you're thinking about the purpose of the equipment. And then the second is, will it fit my vehicle? Because that's what you're going to be using the equipment on, right? So the reason that MatchPoint has been so beneficial for our customers is because in the heavy equipment industry, and if you think about a traditional e-commerce page, it's very easy to answer four of those five questions. It's very easy to answer: will it do the job that I need it to do? At a base level, you can put the photo of the product, and if someone is looking for a mulcher and it looks like a mulcher, you're good. You can also have demo videos. You can have technical brochures, key features, like what it's best used for, things like that, customer testimonials. All that stuff helps with answering this particular question, and that's all very common stuff on an e-commerce page. Can I afford it? Also relatively easy to do. To maximize this on an e-commerce page, you want to have the price. You do not want to be just doing something where you're saying request a quote. That's anathema. People are just going to leave and find something that has the price. But the other thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is you want to have financing options. So you want to make sure that your people can either buy it in full at the time of the order, or they can finance it, using like a business loan or something like that. Like, you have to have both, because this is an industry where people are doing paid work. And so you have to consider the fact that people aren't going to be buying things up front. They might be financing or leasing or things like that. Fourth one, will it arrive when I need it to? This is another one I see people get wrong a lot. It's very naive to think that you should just put in stock or built to order or something like that. But what you need to do is you need to go the extra mile and tell the customer when they'll get it if they order. Like, you have to have that information on there, Because you have that information, by the way. You don't want the customer to be guessing at that. And really, best practices for just e-commerce in general is never make the customer have to find information on their own. Like, you should deliver all of the information to them so that it's completely brain dead when they're just like, okay, this, and this all meet my criteria. So again, estimated delivery date. Don't just put in stock, don't or built to order. You want to say, hey, if you order this today, you're going to get this on February 22nd or something like that. And you want to be very specific about the day. Now, what happens if it doesn't? That fifth question. This is something that you can put in the FAQs, warranty information, return information, shipping information, ordering parts, things like that. This, in my opinion, should be like directly below the fold. So it doesn't need to necessarily be in the main section, but you want to have it like the very first thing that people see when they scroll down, because they're going to look at this, and if everything else checks out and they get to the fifth question, they're going to scroll. And that's when you want to hit them immediately with answering that question before you get into all of this other supplementary information about the product. So very, very important to put in there. But now let's jump back to, will it fit my vehicle? This is something that's very hard to do on an e-commerce page for heavy machinery. There's not really an easy way to do it in a way that's digestible by the customer, because there's so many different ways that you can configure an attachment, and there's so many different ways that you can configure a vehicle or have a vehicle, different packages, counterweights, transmissions, things like that. A naive way to do it would be to have a huge table that just says like compatible with all of these models and stuff like that. But it still also doesn't take on the nuances of like high flow, low flow packages, different mounts, different adapters, things like that. This is what MatchPoint does. This is our bread and butter. So we have an entire system that's fully integrated with your e-commerce or rental company. And what it does is it lets a user pick a vehicle. They mouse through a bunch of different options, set their vehicle. That's active for the entire session. And you can instantly see on the product page just the answer. Is it compatible? Yes or no. Or if different configuration options of that particular attachment are available, maybe there's a different option that is compatible, and we show that as well. So like, hey, not this motor, but this other motor is going to work for you. And what we found that did is, if you have 4 of the 5 gates, right? If you have some of the information but not all of it, you're going to get some people that come through. You're going to get the people that didn't care about a particular thing or maybe had that information beforehand, but you're missing a lot of them. And they're either going to call, which nobody wants to do because it's a huge pain culturally to call companies. So even if your company is amazing and it has all of these incredible service processes and someone picks up the phone right away and they answer all the questions, you're still fighting against the atmosphere of the fact that like calling a company 9 times out of 10 is a huge pain. So most people don't want to do it. They're either going to leave or they're going to call. And most of the time they're just going to leave. So we had a company that implemented this, an e-commerce company. And in the month after they implemented it, so just 30 days after they implemented it, their e-commerce orders, their self-serve zero-touch orders increased by 99%. And this is at like a 6-figure revenue rate for e-commerce orders. So they added over like $122,000 in revenue in a single month just from implementing MatchPoint's compatibility matching. It was insane. Freed up a bunch of capacity for their sales team. So people that used to have to call no longer had to do it. And massively increased the amount of like orders they were getting without any additional work on their end other than just having this functionality. So the 5 gates are incredibly important. Think of them as you're going and you're browsing, you're shopping. Next time you're doing it, think of like that process you're mentally going through, and pay attention to the companies that do it really well and then the companies that do it really poorly. And you can usually tell this because the companies that do it really well are like the bigger companies. So Amazon is my favorite example for this. They do this really, really well. And you can look on any one of their page and answer any one of their pages and answer these 5 questions like very, very quickly. But yeah, that's it. That's the 5 gates. So hope this helps you guys out. Hope this is a handy thing as you guys are considering your own businesses. But if you do have a company that sells or rents heavy machinery attachments and you want to grow like that other company I mentioned, go to matchpointintelligence.com or click the link in the description below. Then click the path for your company type, either e-commerce or rental. Scroll down to the bottom of that page and then book a call with me. I'll talk you through exactly what your numbers are. We'll see what MatchPoint can do for you. And we'll talk through what the integration would look like.